Hi, thank you so much for choosing to watch today. I have a romance recommendation video for you featuring age gap romances. Of all the recommendation videos that I've done, dark romances are the most popular on my channel. But one of the other videos that did really well was a video I recorded a couple of years ago, which was age gaps. And so I thought I'd revisit that today and share some of my more recent favourite age gap romances with you. So the first one will probably come as no surprise whatsoever, because if you've watched any of my videos since January, then you'll know that I've talked about this series non-stop since I read it. And I couldn't do this age gap recommendation video without talking about Fausto and Frankie, and this is the first book in a duet of theirs, which is called Mafia Mistress by Mila Finelli, and it's book 1 in the Kings of Italy series. So this particular couple, Fausto and Frankie, they have 2 books, and the second book in this series is called Mafia Darling. But for the purposes of this recommendation, I'm just going to hold up the first book in this duet. So this couple actually has quite a large age gap. I'm not exactly sure how many years are between them, but around the 20-year mark, I would say. At the start of the story, we learn that Fausto is head of an Italian mafia family, actually based and living in Italy, and he's very a powerful man, and not many people want to go up against Fausto. He's very wealthy, lives in a very affluent surroundings in a vineyard in Italy. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now, he is widowed and he has a son, an older son of marrying age, and so he's looking for a wife for his son. And so when Frankie's father owes Fausto a debt, he decides to convince him that his son should marry his daughter. And so at the very start of this book, Frankie is actually arranged in marriage to Fausto's son. Now, Frankie actually lives in Canada, and so Fausto goes over there to retrieve her, bring her back to Italy, force her into this marriage with his son. But once he gets her back to Italy, he realises that he is not going to be able to let Frankie go, and decides that he wants her for himself. Now, he has no intention of actually getting married, so he wants to keep her as a mistress, but Frankie is not going to be too happy about this because, you know, she's a good Italian mafia princess. She is a virgin at the start of this story, and being his mistress will mean that she is not suitable, not eligible for marriage in the future, and she really doesn't want to be his side piece. So she makes life very difficult for Fausto, but of course Fausto is a very powerful man, always gets what he wants, and ultimately he will get his hands on Frankie. I absolutely loved this story. I absolutely loved this series. I've done a deep dive on this in a Mafia Romance Monday video, so you can check that out. I'll link to it in the video below. But if you are looking for a Mafia romance with a large age gap, because let's face it, most Mafia romances do have age gaps in them, but this one is where, you know, he is the father of someone that she was arranged in marriage to, so the age gap in this one is quite significant, but still it doesn't stop them from having a HEA. So I would definitely recommend not only this duet for this couple, but also the series as a whole. Next up, we have Twisted Games by Anna Huang, and this is book 2 in her Twisted series. It's actually a contemporary romance, and it's a bodyguard romance, and our hero in this one is Reese, and he is our heroine's bodyguard, Bridget, and Bridget is actually a princess. She is kind of second in line to the throne of a small but still powerful European country. There's a 10-year age gap between these two, but again, that doesn't stop them. They are going to be in close proximity. Of course, he's her bodyguard. He is a damaged hero with PTSD. It's going to be a forbidden romance because obviously she is a princess. She is supposed to marry someone of noble blood, certainly not her bodyguard, but he is a very possessive hero. At the start of this book, Bridget has a different bodyguard, but his wife has recently had a baby, and so he's decided that he's going to take some time away from being Bridget's bodyguard so he can spend time with his wife and new child. And so she kind of gets a temporary bodyguard assigned to her, and that's Reese. Reese is ex-military. He is a, you know, bodyguard for hire, and he usually works with very high profile, very famous people, and now he's been kind of contracted to look after Bridget. At the start of this story, she's actually in the USA. She has kind of gone to college there, and that's where she's living. and she is definitely someone who prefers to live in the US rather than her home country because she has a lot more freedom there. Obviously, when she goes home to her home country, she's very well recognised. She has to do the proper royal things, be part of the royal duties, has a lot of media scrutiny on her. And so when she's in the US, she is has a lot more freedom to do kind of what she likes and live almost a normal life. Of course, she still has to have a bodyguard with her. And so for the first couple of years at the start of this book, her and Reese are living in very close proximity together in the US, and she is still doing royal duties, but not as much as she would have to in her home country, finishing her studies. Then she ends up having to take a trip home because her granddad is very sick, and it's actually her granddad who is the current king. She's lost her parents, so it's actually her brother who's next in line to the throne. So when she gets called back to her country because her granddad is unwell, obviously Reese is going to go with her during that time. And while there, she learns that her brother is going to abdicate from the throne. He's fallen in love with a commoner. He's met a flight attendant who he's madly in love with, and of course she is not of noble birth, and so if he wants to marry her, he needs to abdicate. So her brother abdicates, leaving her as next in line to the throne. Now she's got a couple of months before her brother's going to announce this, so she takes this opportunity to do all the things she's always wanted to do. She knows that she's got to cram as much excitement into her life in the next 2 months before she gets to be called back to her country and has to then start kind of queen training, if you like. And so she draws up this bucket list of some of the things she wants to do, and Reese helps her to complete all of the things on her bucket list. And so over the last couple of years, they've kind of formed this connection with each other. They've started to form a friendship, and they get even closer now at the point when he's helping her complete her bucket list, especially as one of the things on her list is to have an orgasm from someone that isn't herself, and he's only too happy to oblige. And so now they've had a kind of a sexual experience with each other, and this has really kind of sparked or open the doors, if you like, to the fact that they've always been very attracted to one another, but they've kind of, you know, remained professional, and now they're going to start to blur the lines between a professional relationship and a more personal one. And then after this, obviously, experience, she then has to go back to learn how to be a queen in earnest, and then we follow what happens to this couple and the repercussions of the fact that they are now in a relationship. They really care about each other, but they need to keep it secret because she cannot be seen to have a romantic liaison with her bodyguard. But how is Anna Huang going to solve this problem so that this couple can ultimately be together? So I really enjoyed that, and like I say, this one is an age gap of about 10 years between the two of them. Next up, I've got Reasonable Doubt by Whitney G. This was actually 3 books in one, so it's actually a trilogy, but it's part of a bind-up. So all 3 parts of this trilogy are in one bind-up, and actually each part is novella length. So collectively they are the same length as a normal novel, and so you can read them all together. In this story, we're following Alyssa and Thoreau, otherwise known as Aubrey and Andrew, and it's unknown exactly how much of an age difference is between them, or at least I can't remember what it is, but there definitely is an age gap because Alyssa is a student at university studying law, but she's also a ballet dancer, and our hero in this one is actually a fully fledged lawyer, very, very successful in his career. So there's at least a 10-year age gap between these two. And so not only is this an age gap, but it's also a lawyer-student situation, a workplace situation, because she becomes his intern and he's the boss. Like I said, she is a ballet dancer as well as being a law student. He's very much a damaged hero and is friends to lovers with a hidden identity, because for a while they are pen pals. So I said that Alyssa and Thoreau / Aubrey and Andrew because I believe their real names are Aubrey and Andrew, but they meet in an online chat room specifically for lawyers, and they've both chosen to change their names. So when they first meet each other online, they believe that they are speaking to each other as Alyssa and Thoreau. Now, Alyssa pretends to be a lawyer and she goes into this chat room asking for legal advice about what to do with some of her cases, and she meets Thoreau and he is only too happy to give her answers. And so they start this relationship online where they very much talk to each other, and this kind of moves from just an online text message situation to them calling each other in the evenings as well. So they form this very close friendship and they start to learn quite a lot about each other. The thing is, this whole time they're concealing their identity from one another. So while they're getting to be friends, obviously they're still keeping secrets from each other. Now what we then learn is that our heroine in this one, so let's call her Aubrey, she, like I say, is actually a student, so she's not a lawyer at all, and when she's asking for advice about cases, she's actually asking for homework help so that she can write her essays. And this comes to a bit of a head because she applies for an internship at his company, and obviously during the interview process he figures out who she is, then becomes very, very angry because he suddenly realizes, hey, this is a much younger woman, she's lied about her identity, and now she's going to be an intern at his firm, so he's going to become the boss. So he's quite angry and frustrated by the situation because he was starting to have feelings for this woman he met online, and now he thinks it's all kind of been ruined and their relationship goes from there. Okay, next up, a relatively new read is Mountain Boss by S.J. Tilley, and this one is book 1 in her new series, the Mountain Men series. It's a contemporary small town romance set in Black Mountain, and our hero in this one, Sterling, is probably a good 20 years older than our heroine, Courtney. Now, Sterling owns his own business, and he's kind of owns a resort for people to come and, you know, have some time in the wilderness. He's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and he takes people like hunting and fishing and that sort of thing. At the start of this book, he's actually looking for a maintenance person to come and help maintain his kind of guest homes, his log cabins, and it's Courtney who applies for the job and gets it. But he mistakes her for a man because on her application it just says court, and so he thinks he's hired a man for the job. And so when Courtney turns up and he realises it's a woman, at first he's not too happy about this and endeavours to make her life a bit of a misery so that she'll quit and leave, because he really doesn't want a woman working for him because he thinks it'll be too much of a distraction, particularly as Courtney is very attractive and he's very attracted to her. And Courtney is a young girl kind of in her 20s. Like I say, there's about a 20-year gap between these two. Our hero is in his 40s. And of course, he's going to be her boss as well. So it makes for an interesting situation for sure, but a really fun read and would definitely recommend. So next up, I have another mafia romance, and that is Sweet Prison by Neva Altaj. This is book 10 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. And this one follows Massimo and Sahara. Now there is an 18-year age gap between these two, and not only that, but these two are step siblings. So if you're looking for an age gap with a bit of a taboo element to it, this may be the book for you as well. But I absolutely love this one. So like I said, it is a mafia romance. Massimo is actually head of the Italian mafia and Sahara is his step sister. However, they would never really grew up together. He never really spent any time together when she was a young girl, because it was his mother, I believe, who married her father. And like I said, they never kind of grew up together. Massimo was already much older and had moved out by the time Sahara came along. And then later, Massimo is actually sent to prison for a crime, and he goes to prison for about 18-20 years, and so they don't even see each other until finally Massimo comes out of prison, and by this time Sahara is in her early 20s, but like I say, there is an age gap of about 18 years, so he is about 40 years old in this story. Now they start to form a friendship while he's still in prison, because she actually writes to him when she's just a teenager as part of a school assignment to write to a family member, and so they become kind of pen pals while he's in prison. And then when he finally comes out of prison and he realizes that she's turned into a very beautiful woman, they are both going to be very attracted to each other, and they're going to be in close proximity together, and so their relationship is going to go from there. So I absolutely love this one. It was one of my favourite reads of last year, and would definitely recommend this book, but also this series from Neva Altaj as well. Next up, I've got Entreat Me by Grace Draven. This is a standalone. It's a fantasy romance, paranormal romance, and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling as well. And we are following Ballad and Louvain. Now, like I said, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so our hero in this one, Ballad, is actually our Beast character, and because of the curse that's been placed upon him, he kind of lives in a bit of a time capsule, and so he is technically about 400 years older than Louvain. So this isn't a very extreme case of a age gap situation where because it's kind of a paranormal story, like I say, he's got a curse that's been placed upon him. He's about 400 years old, and so quite a lot older than Louvain. However, Louvain herself is actually quite a mature character. She's already been married, she's already been widowed, and so she's seen quite a lot of life. So it's not like our hero has got loads of world experience and she doesn't have any and she's a very young girl. She is actually quite a mature woman herself, but like I say, if you're looking for a really extreme age gap, and you can find these in quite a lot of paranormal romances, right, with vampires and werewolves who are, you know, immortals and long-lived, I thought this was a great example, and one that I really wanted to talk about again because I thought it was a fantastic version of Beauty and the Beast. Where it differs slightly though is that actually Louvain isn't actually our Beauty character, at least not right away. She has got a younger sister who is very, very beautiful, and it's actually Ballad's son who has his sights set on Louvain's sister. And because they are cursed, they know that they can break the curse if one of the characters finds true love, and so Ballad has taken most of the curse on himself, freeing up his son to go out into the world to look for a wife, and he absolutely comes across Louvain's sister, falls in love with her and convinces her to come back to the castle with him, and if he can make her fall in love with him over the summer period, she will marry him, and that is where they think the curse will be broken. Now, Louvain is very, very protective of her sister, and so she basically says that her sister can only go if she is a chaperone, to make sure that nothing untoward goes on, you know, to make sure that her sister isn't taken advantage of. And so Louvain then goes with her sister to this castle, and agrees to be a companion to Ballad while his son and her sister, you know, are getting closer together and having a relationship of their own. And so Louvain and Ballad's relationship definitely goes from there, and I absolutely loved it, so I would definitely recommend. Moving back to a contemporary romance, I've got Close Quarters by Kandi Steiner. This is kind of a billionaire romance with Theo and Aspen, and there is a 15-year age gap between these two. So at the start of this story, Aspen has a boyfriend, and her boyfriend is a crew member of Theo's yacht. So he gets a job for the summer, and he is, like I say, employed to be a crew on board this yacht, and he is going to be travelling around Europe in the Mediterranean Sea and visiting lots of European cities as he goes. Now, he convinces Aspen to come with him to Europe, wave him off as he gets on board the yacht, and then her plan is to travel through Europe herself taking photographs, because she is a budding photographer and she wants to take photographs of Europe, and she's really, really looking forward to kind of backpacking across Europe and then meeting her boyfriend kind of at the other end once he's finished the trip. However, she gets invited on board the yacht at the very start of the sailing trip, and that is where she first meets Theo, and Theo invites her to have dinner with him and the rest of his crew before they set sail. And then Theo convinces her to actually stay, and he's like, hey, you were going to travel Europe anyway, you can do it on my yacht, you can take photographs for me, so I'll pay you, you'll get your accommodation, and then when we dock you can basically get off, explore the cities where we dock, and you can take your photos. And so Aspen is really reluctant to do this because, like I said, she was very much looking forward to backpacking across Europe, but her boyfriend convinces her to stay with him. He said it'll be fun, we'll get to spend more time together, you can still take your photos, so she agrees. But little by little we start to realise that her relationship with her boyfriend isn't quite right. He doesn't particularly treat her well, and the more we get into this trip, the more we start to realise just how selfish he is, how much he mistreats her, how much he's gaslighting her, and something isn't quite right with him. More and more though, she's spending time with Theo. He's taken her off the boat with him, they get to explore the cities together, and they're getting much closer, and they're getting kind of very attracted to each other. And Theo in particular really wants to be with her, and he really wants her to leave her boyfriend for him. And ultimately, you know, he's a very rich, spoiled billionaire. He always gets what he wants. And this is the relationship between Theo and Aspen. So there is a little bit of cheating in this. He is an older man, obviously. He's our billionaire. He's 15 years older, like I said. But I really enjoyed this one. I think Kandi Steiner did a great job of getting us to believe that this woman would fall in love with him, and also not at all caring that she's cheated on her boyfriend because of what we discover about what he's been up to and how he's been treating her in return. So absolutely fantastic, and would definitely recommend. Next up, I've got Her Villain by S M LaViolette. This is actually book 6 in the Victorian Decadent series, and it's an erotic historical romance. The couple in this one is David and Calliope, and again, I'm not 100% sure what the age gap is between this couple, but it is significant. David is a very interesting character. He's been through quite a lot in his life, and he is also kind of a psychopath. Let's just say that. He is also working for the government, and it looks like he is a bit of a James Bond style of character. He's definitely a spy, and he's very morally grey, shall we say. At the start of this book, he turns up in London. He's currently living in London, and it's clear that he's there to do some sort of job, and we don't know what it is, but he's absolutely brilliant. He's got a brilliant mind. Very clever, very calculated, but of course, like I said, he is a psychopath, so he's very cold and unfeeling as well, and he doesn't really interact with people very well. He doesn't know really how to be social. However, a man like him obviously has needs, and because he's not really into relationships or emotions, he usually satisfies those needs by seeking out a lady of the night. And so again, at the start of this book, he meets Calliope because Calliope does work in a brothel. However, the brothel has just been sold because her boss lost it while gambling, and now she's been forced out onto the street because she's currently got no job. Now, Calliope was not a sex worker by choice, but her father recently passed away, leaving her pretty destitute, and she became pretty desperate for cash, and she's been planning to save up enough money so that she can travel to America and start a new life. And so when she first meets our hero David, she is just about to be thrown out onto the street, and he offers to pay for her services for the evening. And so with no better offers, she agrees to go home with David, and then she realises that maybe she's got an opportunity to convince him that she can stay for the weekend, and hopefully by then she can figure something out on a more permanent basis. Now, David doesn't quite know what to do with Calliope. He is very intrigued by her, very attracted to her, and Calliope is successful in convincing David to let her stay. In fact, they enter into this kind of sex contract, this sex deal, where she's going to stay with him until, you know, his business in London is finished. And also he sort of says, while you're here, we can also go on some social engagements together, because that will help me out, because I really hate dinner parties. Sometimes I have to go, and it'd be good to have a date and you can keep up a conversation so I don't have to. And their relationship goes from there. This is kind of a dark romance, I would say, as well as it being an erotic historical romance. So you might want to check your trigger warnings, but I really enjoyed this one. I don't read a lot of historicals, but I definitely would read more from this author in this series. And the last one I want to talk about today is The Alpha's Resurrection by Marlowe. This is book 3 in her After End series, and this is actually an Omega verse story. I really like the world that Marlowe has built. I really like this version of the Omega verse, and we were following Jake and Zora. Now, there is a considerable age gap between these two, again a bit like Entreat Me. Jake is very long-lived, and so there's about 100-year age gap between this couple. In this world, in the After End world, it's kind of post-apocalyptic because something happened on Earth, and after this kind of apocalyptic situation took place, that is when life as we knew it completely changed, and out of the ashes of humanity came a kind of a new civilization, and there were still regular humans who they call betas, but we also then got alphas and omegas. Now, Jake is a human who lived before the apocalypse, and after the apocalypse he somehow transformed into an alpha, and he has been then continued to live for another 100 years. So he is probably about 130 years old at this point, because he was a young man when it happened, and now 100 years later he has seen and done very many terrible things, and as a result he's suffered quite a lot from mentally with this. So he's had a lot of mental health issues, and in fact he was a bit of a villain in a previous book in this series, but was given a second chance. So now he is living in a community with other alphas, but because of what happened in a previous book, he's been told that he can't go anywhere near the Omegas. They can't trust him with the Omegas, and so he needs to stay away. And that's where Zora comes into the situation, because Zora is an Omega. She's from out of town, so she's from a nearby village, and she's come to help this alpha community for the summer, because she's a bit of a midwife, and she's helping some of the Omegas that have recently given birth, and so she's there to not only help with the birth, but also to be a bit of a nanny after the babies are born. And of course that is where Zora and Jake first meet. Now Jake is pretty sure that she is his fated mate and they should be together, but of course this is a taboo relationship, it's a forbidden relationship, because like I say, Jake's been told he needs to stay away from the Omegas. But Zora and Jake do meet up, and they tend to meet up at night, and he actually is teaching her how to swim, and we learn much more about her and what she's doing in the village and why she needed to get away from the village she was in. And of course we are going to find a way for this couple to be together, but I really enjoyed it. Would highly recommend. It's a great Omegaverse series, so even if you don't like Omegaverse, would definitely recommend you give this a try. But also another great example of quite a significant age gap, but because of paranormal means, because he is not quite human. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. That's 9 romance recommendations with age gaps. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and all that's left for me to do is say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. In this story, hello, thank you so much for dialing in to listen to me today. Hello, thank you so much for dialing. Now of all the recommendation videos that I've done, Dark